Right, so whilst the Tories make wild claims, such as the DWP Minister talking about disabled people, misleading the public by saying they are getting thousands of pounds every month when really they just need a grab rail, or with Rishi Sunak promising more reforms to the benefit system because, that bill is far too high, and ignoring the fact it's 14 years of Tory rule making so many people sick. But when Sunak talks of reform, he's simply talking about getting a bigger and bigger stick, isn't he? And throwing more people entitled to the support they need off of it, because that's the kind of depraved creature he is. A social conscience colder than a polar bear's nutsack, combined with a national popularity and likeability factor that's in the same region as nappy rash. But as harsh and cruel as they are, if you think Reform UK are likely to be any better than them, then the opinion of Reform UK leader Richard Tice's partner in the Tory graft today should make you think twice, because surely her opinions would be representative of the party she's clearly so closely tied to, wouldn't they? Right, so Isabel Euphemia Oakeshott, for it is she, partner of private company masquerading as a political party, Reform UK, their leader, the perma-grinning, perma-tanned businessman Richard Tice, of course, has yet another attack on those on benefits, which she knows absolutely nothing about, cannot relate to, cannot understand, cannot appreciate the difficulties of living on, because she was born with, basically a silver spoon in her mouth, penned a piece in the Tory graph entitled "Get Benefit Claimants Back to Work, Cleaning Our Filthy Streets." Yeah, let's jump on that Tory bandwagon, and why not? Reform are, after all, just another bunch of Tories, just the type that, for them, the Tory party have become too left-wing these days. According to Oakeshott, the rubbish on our streets is now piling up so high in steaming piles of goodness knows what that she has to apparently play hopscotch to get around it. Is that your technique for dodging it, is it? Okay, then. But she cannot abide, does not understand it. After all, apparently the streets in Dubai, where she goes to, clearly, shine when she goes there. And when you see litter there, it's a noteworthy event. Slow news day in Dubai, then. You must have gone when the weather was better, then, clearly. Why are our streets dirtier, though? Well, apparently it's alcohol that's to blame, according to Oakeshott. We're all drunks in comparison, it seems, and that is why. Where is the civic pride in our country, she moans as she bleats about we, the proles, who throw our kebabs in the gutter and throw up on the streets. It must be true, after all, because the Leanderthal, Lee Anderson, took a photograph of an alleyway with black bags piled up, and he said these things, and he's never staged a thing in his life, has he, after all? Apart from getting his mate to act as a punter when he was filming electioneering, of course. All that time he made a mockery of poverty with his 30p meals. Though, of course, Oakeshott once said those in poverty could live on porridge because oats are cheap. So, very much of a similar mindset. Fundamentally, this is someone with a background wealthy enough to have been sent to a prestigious private school where it's £17,000 a term to be sent there these days, choosing to lecture poor people about being poor. Poverty-splaining to those in poverty, I guess you could call it. She is linked to Reform UK, though, of course, as she is the partner of Richard Tice, himself a multi-millionaire property developer, so again, fully knowledgeable about life in poverty. And when his partner is spilling her guts in the paper, basically saying there's work to be had for benefit claimants if they really wanted it, and we should be making them work if they can, because the narrative is always one of living on benefits being a lifestyle choice, when if either of this gruesome pair had the slightest inkling of actually living on them, they'd realise it is anything but. I suppose those food bank lines are people choosing to be that poor they have to access food in that way. It's a choice for them. You can afford some porridge if you clean our drains, though, eh, Isabel? Lifestyle choices, I'm sure they would call it. That was what Dominic Raab called it, wasn't it? People having cash flow problems. That was what he came up with, wasn't it? That was the reason that food bank queues were growing so large. Now, Oakeshott was on Question Time last November, though, and she made similar claims that people on benefits are just mucking around, apparently.
People on disability benefits and sick pay are an enormous untapped resource, and it is better for them if they can work. Please, let's get them into work. And I don't think it's much of a stick to say if, after 18 months of looking, when there are that many job vacancies, you still refuse to take a job that you can do, and you get another 6 months after that to still muck around, then we're going to take your benefits away. It's not unreasonable.
Even disabled people are not safe to her mind. They're mucking around on benefits too, did you know? News to me. So would they be safe under Reform UK's rule of this country then, as so many people keep cheering for them, especially in social media comments? Of course, it totally ignores the fact many people are forced to food banks are already in work, that many people claiming benefits are in work as well, including many disabled people. But support keeps getting cut, withdrawn. And instead of acknowledging that, it's all about these people that are apparently lead swinging because there are so many people out of work. They cite figures of £5 million on their website, Reform UK's website, that can't possibly be right. They can't possibly all be ill. There has to be an issue here. And if that is the kind of mindset of Reform UK and its leadership, well, in what way are they really saying anything different to what Rishi Sunak and Mel Stride have been saying for the last week or so? Anyway, I thought I'd go on to Reform UK's website to see if there was anything along the lines of benefit reform plans laid out yet, to see if it did reflect Oakeshott's views here, as I surmised it might. And I found this document on there. They have a policy page. They really do. 4 documents on it. One devoted to healthcare, another to Starmergeddon, and a working draft of a social contract, I suppose you could call it. But there was another there called Reform is Essential, which, although it didn't have anything particularly benefits orientated on the face of it, I thought this was probably the best one to go and have a dig through, so I did. It's only 16 pages, most of it devoted to lowering taxes and bashing migrants, but there were a few choice nuggets in here, and when I introduced this video as being along the lines of are Isabel Oakeshott's rancid Tory graph musings akin to Reform UK policy, is that what she's subliminally peddling here through the Tory graph? Well, turns out I might not have been all that far off. There's not a lot of benefits here. It's focusing on doing one thing somewhere else in order to get people back into work, that kind of thinking. So let's get into it. According to Reform UK, there are 1.5 million more people even on benefits since the pandemic, and they desire a return to pre-2019 levels of benefit claims, feeling this is too high. Nowhere here do they seemingly ask themselves why that number rose from 2019. A small thing called the pandemic, you might remember it. They can't seem to grasp that people might have got ill and are still possibly suffering the ill effects of illness. Goodness me, is that how illness works? Might be news to them. There's this thing called long COVID for starters. I wonder if they've heard of that one as well. I tell you what they have heard of though, vaccine injury. They've heard of that one. Tice & Co want an inquiry into that. All vaccines carry a risk of adverse side effects, and inevitably these can be severe, but the narrative that these jabs, which literally saved lives, were inherently dangerous is just garbage. It's dangerous talk, and it's why we're seeing rises in things like measles again now, because people cotton onto it, believe it, and then choose not to have their kids vaccinated. The consequences of catching the disease outweigh any risk of complications from a jab. Now, if, for example, Reform UK are so obsessed with people being made ill by the jab, though, does that not show you that more people are ill due to the pandemic from a different point of view, though? A nonsense one, but if you believe it, then your own policy idea is still undermined, is it not? Or are you pushing this and actually don't believe it? You wouldn't be lying to people, would you? That would be a proper Tory thing to do, wouldn't it? Of course, being Reform UK, they had to shoehorn in immigration to their benefit reform plans as well, and according to their document here, they believe a zero-tolerance approach to immigration is what's needed for the UK, only allowing in the same number of people that emigrate each year, and ensuring they are only the skilled people we need. Well, this will raise low wages and encourage people to take up work when they aren't currently. So, by their rationale, therefore, you're still saying everyone on benefits is there at a choice then. If the jobs aren't paying enough, that's why they're sitting on benefits. It's not worth enough to them. But if we bring those wages up, well, they'll all take up work then, won't they? By definition, that must be what you think. That's the logic here, because that's the tie, that's the connection. Because how else do you tie more vacancies and better wages, which I am unclear on how that arises? More vacancies creates demand for these jobs. I suppose employers might have to offer better terms, perhaps. But it's no guarantee. And certainly when you still struggle to fill them, will you accept some people on benefits simply cannot actually work? Or are you just going to find an even bigger stick for them? You can club them with the entire bloody tree if you want to. They can't work. They can't work. It doesn't mean they are feckless, but it does appear that this is the thinking within Reform UK. And pretty much that's all I can find that is in print and concretely written down. But it might as well have been written by Oakeshott herself, in my opinion. That could have been pulled straight out of her article, really. If you hate the Tories for what they are doing and saying about benefit reform right now, Reform UK are certainly no better than that on the face of it, and I'd certainly take anything Oakeshott writes on one hand with the contempt it will almost certainly deserve. She's ardently right-wing and I'm not. but also a window into how that party would run things should it ever become more prominent as well, as is the fear, as is the worry, especially if Keir Starmer makes an absolute lash up of power, as I certainly expect him to do. And with the Tories possibly having been eviscerated and annihilated by that point, who would come in as the opposition after that? And if you think I would leave Labour out of all of this as well, here's a video recommendation for you on where Starmer formally ditched his plans to enshrine the rights of disabled people into law. So his party is clearly no better on this score either. But then when you've got tougher than benefits on the Tories, Rachel Reeves as the potential Chancellor in waiting, that shouldn't be a shock to you. If you want a good place to start, I'd opt to go and have a look at the Green Party policy pages on benefits. If you want a proper, reasoned, humane approach to benefits. Not only can you find all of that party's policies in detail on their website, but universal basic income, as is their plan, will restore dignity and end poverty completely. And we wouldn't even have these debates anymore. I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.